and so on and so forth.
When the First World War broke out, all of this military technology and force was unleashed on the world. A generation enjoying the peace and progress of liberal society was amazed and shocked. That war pitched the world into a century of violence.
This ascending curve of technical capacity to unleash violence, of course, reached its absolute apogee with the appearance of the nuclear weapon. This really brought to a culmination a tendency that had begun, way back in the Stone Age, when the first human being picked up a bone and started beating his rival. It really began there and continued all the way to the nuclear weapon.
The prospect of mutually assured destruction might have kept the superpowers in check, but it did nothing to slow weapons development. As the 21st century unfolds, the same technology that gave us the benefit of cell phones, microwaves, and remote control is now being applied to a completely new array of powerful weapons. A development veiled in secrecy, until a certain New York Times reporter started digging.
Well, the New York Times wanted to do a story on the new frontiers of military technology. And we have done a lot of work previously on what have been called smart bombs and the satellite-guided munitions. We really wanted to find really what the next frontier was. And I did some reporting, talking to some military analysts that I know, and also some people actually in the investment community who follow companies that make their money off government contracts. And they mentioned to me this whole new category of weapons known as directed energy or electromagnetic weapons. And that's really how we found out about it. And then we started doing some reporting, and one of the hard things about it was that the government really didn't want to come forward with a lot of information. Most of these programs still remain secret or classified.
Manufacturers are now developing a full range of electromagnetic weapons which pack an invisible wallop, hundreds of times more powerful than the electrical current in a lightning bolt. One can blast enemy missiles out of the sky. Another can be used to blind soldiers on a battlefield. Still another to control an unruly crowd by burning the surface of their skin. If detonated over a large city, an electromagnetic weapon could destroy all electronics in seconds. Though their effects may be different, they have one remarkable feature in common. They all use directed energy to create a powerful electromagnetic pulse.
What is an electromagnetic pulse weapon? Actually, you can think of it probably too simply, but not terribly inaccurately, as a lightning bolt on steroids. Right now, an electromagnetic pulse from a lightning bolt is a pretty crude club. The wavelength is way too long. So ideally, what you would like to do is shift the energy of the electromagnetic pulse from the long wavelength of a lightning bolt down into a microwave. Now, what is a microwave? Microwaves are all the waves between a meter and a millimeter. Now think of how well that couples with everything in our society, because almost everything we use electronically fits between a meter and a millimeter. If you look at a standard electromagnetic device that's made to read electromagnetic pulses like your cell phone, here's an antenna. It's actually made to absorb electromagnetic radiation. It's just not designed to take the power of the pulse of an electromagnetic weapon.
These electromagnetic weapons can be used to destroy basically anything with a chip in it. Not only communication systems and devices, but power systems, television and radio systems. Even most cars these days have an electronic ignition in them. And if they were deployed in the relevant place, in our society now, and in many countries, anything with a chip in it could be disabled.
The electromagnetic pulse effect as a weapon really came to our attention quite accidentally during the early atomic tests. When the first detonations occurred, unprotected electromagnetic equipment, which we had a lot of back then, died. And of course, this came to everybody's attention because a lot of this was instrumentation that was supposed to be recording the effects of the weapon. So of course, everybody standing around this early destroyed and arced out and melted equipment, shaking their heads and saying, what happened? Especially since there was no wind damage, there was no overpressure damage, there was just fried electrical equipment. Well, it didn't take long after a few tests and iterations to realize there's a huge electromagnetic pulse generated when a nuclear weapon explodes. And a huge electromagnetic pulse is very destructive to unprotected electrical equipment. And then it was sort of like, whoa, there's a weapon effect here. So early in the 50s, at Los Alamos, where they were doing this high-level nuclear work, they said, what about just creating this electromagnetic pulse? And that's where the early work was done on trying to figure out a way to convert explosive energy into electrical energy. And since that time, we've had laboratories and an active research program that's been spending its time develop electromagnetic and high-energy microwave weapons.
The Los Alamos lab in New Mexico, the birthplace of the atomic bomb, and an area controlled by the Department of Energy and the Department of Defense. Signs warn visitors that roads may be closed at any time without warning. It's hard to believe that this forbidding place could have any connection to tranquil Belle Island in Newfoundland. But in 1978, they were linked, when defense satellites picked up a light emission far more powerful than that of the Hiroshima bomb. This prompted the dispatch of 2 scientists from Los Alamos to Belle Island. Within 24 hours, 2 investigators, John Warren and Robert Freeman, appeared on the remote island. The arrival of 2 visitors from an American weapons lab surprised the residents of Belle Island. But the situation became even more bizarre with the arrival of a Russian general flanked by US and Canadian military personnel. Why would the Russians cross continents in order to conduct an investigation at the Beckford home?
Military personnel from Canada, from the United States, as well as from Russia, were here over the next period of time down into the area. They came to the office and wondered if we had anything different than what they had obtained themselves, which we didn't. We shared stories. However, that's all. They didn't share any of their findings with us.
I gave them exhibits that I had seized. They placed the exhibits in a metal box which was properly locked and secured. They were very secretive. If they wanted to discuss anything, they said, "Excuse us for a moment," and they went a distance and they wrote down notes. And they'd come back and they'd interview me again.
Why did Cold War enemies rush to Belle Island to investigate a lightning strike? Maybe it wasn't a lightning strike at all, but as some newspapers and scientists speculated, the result of some military experiment gone terribly wrong.
The precision of our electromagnetic pulse, much like the precision of our regular munitions, our conventional munitions, has increased significantly. So we'll be able to take out the electricity in a city block or in a command and control center, something like that. If we were looking at what an electromagnetic pulse might look like, if you could see it, it would be sort of like when you see in the cartoons when there's a pulsating cone